Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Reese Orman. I am the CEO of NeuroGlow, and with me today is actually NeuroGlow's functional nutritionist, Paula Nelms. Paula, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Reese. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Well, I know when we were preparing for this and kind of going through our practice run, you had a lot of really useful information. I gained a lot from this yesterday, so I'm excited to share this with our audience today. So I will kind of let you take it from here. Audience, I'll be moderating the chat Q&A. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in there. And we have some time allocated here at the end of the session to review all that. So with that, why don't you take it away, Paula?
All right. Thank you so much, Reese. So, as Reese mentioned, my name is Paula Nelms. I am a clinical board certified nutritionist, and I have extensive education and training in functional medicine. I have a Master of Science in nutrition and functional medicine, and I also hold degrees in psychology and education. So, I have my toes dipped in a lot of areas. I own Nelms Nutrition, which is located in Rockwall, Texas, but I also serve the greater DFW area and the US now. And it is, like I said, it's such a pleasure to be here. I'm privileged to support NeuroGlow and their clients in any way that I can. So what we're going to talk about today is nutrition strategies that support mental health. And so what are we going to cover? We are going to talk about how healthy roots make a healthy organism. We're going to talk about the effects of poor nutrition and chronic stress on the human organism. We're going to talk about inflammatory versus anti-inflammatory eating, therapeutic eating and superfoods, healthy meal and snack planning. And we're even going to talk about supplements a little bit. Do we actually need them? And I'm going to close out this webinar with a mental health case study on obsessive compulsive disorder, also known as OCD. So the first big question that comes to mind, is nutrition important for mental health? Can it make a difference? Research tells us that absolutely it can. It can be a root cause of mood disorder and mental health challenges, or it can be a significant contributor. What I have found in my professional experience is nutrition is one of the last places that people with mental health challenges go. And that's understandable because nutrition is confusing. It can be intimidating. It can be overwhelming. What is the right way to eat? What should we include? What should we exclude? I mean, it's really confusing. It definitely can be. But what we know, it is one of the most powerful tools we have to either improve or impair our mental and physical health. Nutrition, all in all, can be used to improve, prevent, or reverse chronic disease. Nutrition influences everything. It touches all of our cells. We have 36 trillion cells. Everything we eat, everything we put in, that touches every single cell. And as it does that, it determines how our organs are going to function. And as I already mentioned, nutritional deficiency is a common root cause and/or contributor for mood disorder. So I mentioned that I really love functional medicine. I spend a lot of my day knee deep in functional medicine. In functional medicine, our main goal is to discover the root causes of dysfunction and disease, and that could be physical or mental. And when I talk about the roots, so this is a symbol for functional medicine right here. This is the functional medicine tree. And so the big takeaway from this is whatever is going on at the roots, whatever you're putting in at the roots, determines how the rest of the tree or the organism is going to function. And so when we're talking about roots, we're talking about having proper sleep and relaxation, really prioritizing that. When we talk about mental health, when we are sleeping, when we get good quality sleep, that's when a lot of the repair to our brain takes place and throughout the entire body. We also are talking about exercise and movement as a root. The more we move, the more we are physically active, we get more oxygen and nutrients to the brain. Stress. Stress is going to be a huge one that will determine how the organism will function. Another one, nutrition, hydration. Already touched on that. It's extremely important. And over there on this side, you see relationships. If we have crummy relationships, that's going to cause a lot of stress to our lives and can really affect how the organism is going to function. So in this, I put stress and nutrition as two of the deepest roots. And indeed, they are going to be two of the biggest roots that determine our mental health. But as you see, the roots, as you go up the organism, that tree there, if our roots aren't healthy, we start to have signs and symptoms of mental and physical disease. And it can affect literally the entire body. It can affect the lungs, the skin, it can affect our brain, neurotransmitters, our mental health, the immune system, how it functions, our heart and blood vessels. The gut, we're going to talk about the gut quite a bit here in a minute. It's one of the biggest places where mental health challenges show up, believe it or not. Our hormones, they can be out of balance when the roots aren't healthy. Our cells, I mentioned we have 36 trillion of them. Within our cells, we have the mitochondria that make all of our energy. When they become dysfunctional, we can be looking at things like low energy and chronic fatigue. The kidneys and liver, when the roots aren't healthy, that can affect our detoxification. And so, yeah, the big takeaway here is we want our roots to be healthy. And all of this is connected. Organ systems do not live and breathe and function independently from the others. Everything is connected. And so when you have dysfunction in one system, you can definitely have dysfunction in other systems.
Paula, I really like that graphic because even when we were
Yeah.
viewing this and preparing for it, it's hard to be really holistic and think about this if you're not like, you know, I think we all try to look for often we look for like a quick fix, or it's just this one thing. I can just change my diet, or I can add supplements and it's going to be that fix, right? But it takes a
Yes.
really well-rounded approach to be able to get to that full level of health that we're talking about.
Yeah, it definitely does. I work with a lot of clients and they come to me and they say, well, I really don't want to make a lot of changes to the diet. That's too hard. What one supplement could I add that would make everything just work really well? Occasionally, once in a blue moon, that can happen. But most of the time, you're right, we need to take a holistic approach to this, look at all of the different determinants in the roots, try to make those as healthy and as optimal as possible. And then you start to see the organism function a lot better, typically.
Yeah.
Okay, so with this in mind about how everything is connected, I want to go to this next slide. Oh, yes. Okay. Well, no, let me back up. So we've talked a little bit about nutrition. We've talked about the roots. And I did mention that nutrition and stress are two of the biggest roots that can cause dysfunction in mental health challenges. And so research tells us, we ask the question, how does chronic stress create mayhem throughout the body? Um, so what research tells us is that when we have a chronic stressor, something that triggers repeatedly in our life, feelings of stress, um, that can set up the increase in our biggest stress hormone, which is cortisol. Now, two other stress hormones are norepinephrine and epinephrine. Those come into play too. But the biggest one, this is what's behind our fight or flight response, is cortisol. And so when cortisol goes up and it stays up for extended periods of time, think chronic stressor, we start to see abnormal immune system function. Cortisol, when it goes high and stays high, it actually suppresses the normal activity of the immune system. It just pushes it down. And so we may not be able to fight infections as well, things like that. And so when the immune system does start acting so abnormally, it starts sending out these immune messengers, these inflammatory messengers. Those messengers can go to the brain, they can go to our joints, they can go along our spine. And like I already mentioned, the huge spot where they show up is going to be in the GI tract, in the gut. So when these messengers are sent out from the immune system, that sets the entire body up for chronic low-grade inflammation. And like I said, it goes everywhere. And when that is happening over an extended period of time, you can begin to see one or more organ systems begin to act kind of weird. And so really this whole scenario is a chronic stress situation. We all have acute stressors, maybe at work, maybe in a relationship, maybe we're driving home in bad traffic and we're really upset about that. These are acute stressors, and typically we can deal with those. They pass and they are resolved. Everything goes back to normal. In this situation, we're talking about those chronic stressors that we just can't get on top of. And it literally affects every inch of the body. Okay, and with that in mind, so this is research I did when I first started working with NeuroGlow. And so the question here is, how do chronic stress and poor nutrition affect the body? And we're going to look here specifically at different ways stress can show up and poor nutrition can show up. And we're going to go clockwise around this. So if you are up at hormones, I've already mentioned we can have altered levels of stress hormones. There's cortisol once again. If you see right below that box, you'll see the immune system coming into play. It's starting to act abnormally, and you've got that chronic systemic inflammation that's showing up. Back to the hormone box, not only can you have altered stress hormones, you can also have altered thyroid hormones, altered sex hormones, insulin. Of course, that's a huge thing, insulin resistance, that can be set up here. And whenever this occurs, we have increased risk for metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, prediabetes, and diabetes. We may see underweight, we may see overweight, we may see obesity here. And the symptoms that typically happen when our hormones get out of balance is we're going to have increased fatigue, insomnia, low libido, infertility, and weight gain. Under the immune system, I think I already mentioned, once it goes out of balance, symptoms we may see could be frequent infections. Think of those people that say, I'm always sick. I just, if there's a bug coming through the room, it finds me and I come down with it. They may have pain, systemic pain, localized pain, and increased risk for chronic disease. And now I already mentioned the gut. This is going to be, in my experience, I've worked with a lot of people with mental health challenges, mood disorders at this point. This is the number one biggest spot where chronic stress, mood disorder, inflammation, the whole deal, where it shows up. And what that's going to look like is altered gut function. And this makes sense because mental health, a lot of that is centered in the mind, in the brain. The gut is connected to the brain directly. They call that the gut-brain axis. We find a whole lot of our neurotransmitters through the gut, a lot of serotonin, a lot of GABA, they're all there. So, and what we see with this altered gut function, so our bowel habits could swing from constipation to diarrhea. We could have irritable bowel syndrome. We can have increased risk for inflammatory bowel disease. That's not a good one. We could have bloating, food sensitivities, and this could set us up for decreased digestion and absorption. If we keep going around clockwise, where you see cellular, that's going to refer to all 36 trillion of our cells. And if you remember from high school or college biology, the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. So the mitochondria is who is responsible for producing all of our energy. When we have this chronic stress, mood disorders, abnormal immune system function, we begin to see the mitochondria struggling. Once they start struggling, that even adds to the inflammation throughout the body, and that depletes our antioxidant resources. And so what that looks like in an individual, they would have decreased energy production, increased fatigue, and things like brain fog can set up. If we keep going around under detoxification, that can relate to the kidneys, but a huge one is going to be the liver. The liver is tied into the gut. So it's no surprise that dysfunction in the gut is going to make the liver act kind of weird too. So we can have impaired function there. We can have reduced detoxification. And that again can increase our risk for fatigue, sometimes chronic fatigue, and set up brain fog. If you keep going around at the heart and blood vessels, all of this inflammation can directly damage the inner lining of our blood vessels. And that can create a lot of dysfunction. Typically, that happens over an extended period of time. And so this can increase our risk for heart disease. We can have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, metabolic syndrome, diabetes. Again, those are showing up. And then up at the top under brain, we've already talked about that a little bit, but when things go out of balance like this, we can have altered neurotransmitters, altered brain function. Again, we can have brain fog coming from a different direction now. We can have symptoms of ADD and, of course, changes in mood. So when I was doing this research, one of the most surprising things I found, I started looking into gene expression, and that is referred to as our epigenetics. And I found, we have our genes, we get them from mom and dad. Those don't really ever change. What can change is how our genes are expressed. And what determines how they are expressed are going to be things like stress, nutrition, physical activity. There are things we can do to change how they are expressed. But back to what I found in my research, children that grew up with childhood trauma, they literally have altered gene expression in their adrenal glands. And the adrenal glands are what they produce our cortisol, all of our stress hormones. So this actually makes sense.
Thank you so much for sharing this with us. When when we discussed this earlier, Paula, I talked about in my personal experience dealing with inflammation and gut issues and when I was younger college kid, how then now bringing like alcohol into the mix then just propagated all of this and feeling
Right.
inflamed and having these issues. And so just to that notion of nutrition and stress, these things can really, clearly
Mhm.
take a significant impact on your overall well-being.
Absolutely. It literally touches every cell, every system, every function. And will you see this in everyone that has mental health challenges or mood disorder? You will not see every single thing listed here in those people, but it happens often enough that it's really well established in the research. And this is what we're on the lookout for. When I deal with a client that's coming in with a lot of inflammation, a lot of mental health issues, these are the things that I look for and that I try to bring back into balance. Okay, so now let's move on to food. Let's talk about the difference between an inflammatory and an anti-inflammatory dietary pattern. So under an inflammatory pattern, we see, I think most people wouldn't be surprised by a lot of the things on this list. Inadequate and excess intake of calories, processed, ultra-processed foods. I think right now, we believe adults, 70% of their diet is processed food. Children, it can go 80 to 90%. Fried foods, refined grains, refined carbohydrates, cured and processed meats, trans fats, some of our saturated fats, not all of them are bad. Excess sugar sweetened beverages and sweets, some artificial sweeteners, some are okay for us, others can become inflammatory. And then case by case, dairy, gluten, and soy. For some people, one or more of these is highly inflammatory. For others, they handle it really well. And there are a lot of nutritious foods that fall into these categories. So I always take that case by case. But what we see overall in an inflammatory dietary pattern is there is an inadequate intake of vitamins, minerals, fiber, lean proteins, and healthy fats.
Paula, I saw I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were
Yeah.
they were articulating uh the presence of sugar in the modern diet versus what, historically humans had privy to, which was traditionally, small instances of sugar derived from fruit, right? Versus
Exactly.
now, like the example they gave is, to absorb the same amount of sugar you'd get in a can of Coke, you'd have to eat 30 oranges. Now, those 30 oranges have fiber in them that would help offset that, but that just me
Absolutely.
that, it's nothing for us or kids to just down a soda and to think about, and we have not evolved to really process sugar in that kind of fashion, right?
We have not. And so I've actually looked this up. Our ancestral diets had about 2 kilograms of sugar per year. And that, you're correct, it came from fruits, but also vegetables. Vegetables have fructose. They don't have as much as fruit does, but they do have it. And so, yeah, our ancestors ate a lot of fruits and vegetables, that were available in their area. And they had about 2 kilograms worth. Now, worldwide, the average is about 25 kilograms worth annually that each person does. So yeah, our food system has changed, and not in very good ways. So now let's talk about an anti-inflammatory dietary pattern. So this is going to be diverse, multicolored veggies, green leafy veggies, that's going to be a superfood, diverse, multicolored fruits, nuts and seeds, beans, legumes, peas, tofu, whole grains, fatty fish, chicken, turkey, lamb, grass-fed beef, eggs, healthy fats. We're going to talk about those too. Making sure you're getting enough water. And if you have organic produce available at your grocery store and it's within your budget, I always recommend to go organic whenever possible. We've got a lot of data coming out on, the pesticides there that are on our fruits and veggies, and it's really sobering how much is still there. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a few different food groups and point out a few superfoods. So the first one is going to be colorful veggies. And so, Reese, have you heard the term eat the rainbow?
Yes, absolutely.
I think most people have by now. And so what this refers to is trying to get as many colors out of your fruit. This applies to fruits as well. Get as many colors either into your daily dietary habits or over a week, or just become really mindful. Try to sneak them in as much as you can. The reason we want to do that is because the different colors tell us there are different nutrients that reside in that color. So red is going to have different antioxidants than yellow. The deeper we go in color, the more antioxidants, the more powerful antioxidants we have actually. Now, our veggies and fruits, they're going to have a lot of the same vitamins and minerals and fiber. But what we're talking about here is the antioxidants and other phytonutrients that are extremely important. So here we have our colorful veggies. Leafy green veggies are actually a superfood within the veggie community. So just like the different colored veggies, I always recommend that you have different color, not different colored greens, but different varieties of greens because they actually have different nutrients than the other ones. And so when we get a wide variety of them, we come really close to getting our nutrient needs met. Now, having said this, a lot of people enjoy salads, some people not so much, and so they have very little leafy green intake. So what I recommend to my clients that do not like leafy greens is to put them in a smoothie. You can put so many different things in a smoothie. It is a wonderful vehicle for getting a lot of really great things in. So you can do, different fruits. Strawberries are great. Apples make it really smooth and creamy. So does cucumber. And then you can top it off with a few servings of green leafy vegetables, and it's a nutrition powerhouse for sure. And it's easy to put together. Okay, colorful fruits. We already touched on this. This is the same story as the colorful veggies. So a superfood within the fruit community is going to be berries. So these have lower sugar in them, high fiber, very high fiber, lower carbohydrate count if anyone's watching their carbs. As I mentioned before, the deeper you go in color with the berries, the more antioxidants that they have. So within this, blueberries and blackberries are going to be your real heavy hitters, your real superstars here. But raspberries, strawberries, the other berries, those are really great for you too. All right, now we move on to nuts and seeds. This is another superfood. Nuts actually have healthy carbohydrates, healthy protein, healthy fiber, healthy fats. They are a superfood in and of themselves. They are a great snack. They meet all of the categories that, we look to when we're trying to put together a healthy dietary pattern. And I like to tell my people, get a variety of them if you can. You can even put nuts in smoothies. You can put seeds in smoothies. Again, these have great nutrients. Try to get a variety. Beans is going to be another superfood. And just like with the multicolored veggies and fruits, we've got multicolored beans. And so those beans tell us that they have unique nutrients that the other colors don't have. Beans have really great fiber. They have many different kinds of fiber in them. So they are great if you're having any kind of gut issues, any constipation, altered bowel habits, things like that. And then whole grains. So I find this to be one of the most confusing categories within nutrition because we have whole grains and then we have refined grains. And I find that about 60% of my clients don't know the difference between whole and refined grains. So if you look at this box, this little picture here at the top, it shows us the difference between a whole grain and a refined grain. So when you look at a whole grain, they have this outer covering called the bran. It's full of fiber. This is great for constipation. Along with the fiber, it has B vitamins and other minerals. If you look at the endosperm, this is a starchy part of the grain. It's got some protein and some vitamins, but mainly it's just starch, and starch is another word for sugar. And then it's got this little nutrient-packed core called the germ. Within the germ, it has a bunch of B vitamins, vitamin E, other phytochemicals, antioxidants, healthy fats. I mean, wheat germ is amazing. So then if you look on the other side of this picture, you look at the refined grain and you don't see anything, right? The bran has been removed. The germ has been removed. Germ, by the way, is one of our best sources of vitamin E. Vitamin E is very important for mental health. Anyway, over here in this refined grain, they have stripped everything off of it and out of it, and they have just left the starchy, sugary part. And so when you go to the grocery store, a lot of our processed foods have refined grains. When you go out to eat at a restaurant, a lot of those grains are going to be refined. And basically what that means is there aren't really any nutrients there at all. If you eat a huge amount of refined grains, they are taking up a lot of space in your diet where more nutritious foods could come in. So with my people, I tell them, if you're eating a lot of refined grains, start to swap those out. You don't have to go cold turkey, but just start to swap them out. Start to, take this refined grain and maybe replace it with something that is a whole grain. And examples of whole grains are like long grain rice, wild rice, long grain basmati rice. Oats are always whole grain. Quinoa isn't technically a grain, but it acts like a grain, so we call it a grain. And there are whole grain versions of breads, bagels, pastas, and tortillas. And when you're looking for whole grains at the grocery store, I've got, at the bottom of this slide, a nutrition label. Just look for the word whole. If you see the word whole, you're in good company. All right, our next therapeutic food is going to be fatty fish, but overall, I really like seafood. I like to tell my people to eat this about 2 to 3 times per week. Fatty fish, great examples of that are going to be salmon, definite superfood for the brain. It has a lot of omega-3 fatty acids, but tuna does as well. You can even do canned varieties of those. Believe it or not, anchovies and sardines are amazing for your health. And I've only met like 2 people in my career that have really liked those and sought out to eat those. But I also like the other seafood too. What we worry about here is going to be mercury levels. So you would want to avoid the larger fish like sharks, swordfish. Even I think we discovered yesterday, Reese, mackerel has a little bit more
Yeah.
mercury. And so I might need to amend this slide, but yeah, and it kind of depends on who you talk to. But those bigger fish that live longer, they've been around the block a whole lot. And they are going, they eat fish that have mercury. They're going to have a lot of mercury accumulation. So try to keep the intake to about 2, maybe 3 times a week and try to keep it wild caught.
Yeah.
Wild caught is going to be more nutritious. They get to eat their natural prey, live in their natural habitats. They aren't pumped full of antibiotics, not living in close quarters with other fish. And so a fish, when it's allowed to be raised naturally, it is extremely nutritious, but it's also a lot more expensive. So there is that. Okay, moving right along. Now we're at poultry, chicken and turkey, great options for protein to put in the diet on a daily basis. Beef, beef gets kind of a bad rap, right? We talk about it a lot with heart disease and high cholesterol. If we are eating it every day or a whole lot during the week, I would say, yeah, that's probably not a great idea. But in an overall, mainly healthy dietary pattern, putting it in there 1 to 2, maybe 3 times a week, probably not going to have a bad effect for you. But I always tell my people, try to make it grass-fed. Grass-fed, they're eating a more nutritious diet, more of a natural habitat diet. And so it is when they are allowed to do that, they have tons of nutrients. They even have a lot of omega-3 fatty acids, which are so great for the brain. Okay, eggs. This is another confusing one. Eggs get a bad rap too. And the US government can't decide, do we like eggs? Do we want our people to eat them? Or do we not like eggs? Do we not want them to eat them? It changes about every 5 to 10 years, believe it or not. Every time the USDA dietary guidelines come out, they have a new offering on what we do with eggs. And so what I always tell my people is if you think about an egg, it has all of the nutrients in it to develop and grow an entire organism. So that tells you how nutrient dense eggs are. If you have high cholesterol, like inherited cardiovascular disease, you may want to watch this intake. Otherwise, having eggs, 2 eggs at a time, a few times a week is not going to hurt you. It's actually very healthy proteins, very healthy fats. And here we are at healthy fats. So the, heavy hitters, superstars in this category are going to be avocados, avocado oil. That's great for high temperature cooking. Also extra virgin olive oil. That is one of the healthiest things you can put in your body. It benefits the brain, benefits every cell. It's really wonderful. You can also have nut butters. Those are really healthy, along with nuts, salmon, eggs. I mean, this list could have been a long list of all the ways we can get healthy fats. With nut butters, I just warn people, try to watch how much sugar they've put in there. They have a lot of nut butters now that have less sugar that still are almost as tasty and a lot more healthy for you. And so here's my limitation screen. No dietary talk would be, complete without this. So butter and margarine, I tell everyone to try to limit that to less than 1 tablespoon per day. So maybe a couple times a week, let that show up. If you've got a really good sourced butter, like a Kerrygold, something like that, those are good choices. Cheese, I think having a little bit of cheese once a day is perfectly fine. If you don't have lactose intolerance, okay? Red meat and products, we've already touched on that. Fried foods, we've already mentioned that too. Try to make that near, not very often at all. chips, pastries, sweets, sugar sweetened beverages. I've got on here, research says try to make that less than 5 servings per week. But I would say, as minimal as you can do is going to be better. And alcohol, of course, our guidelines there are 1 glass per day, but don't start drinking if you don't already drink. And so I'd like to put this slide into my educational content. Which foods are high in added sugar? So I think most of this would not be a surprise for most people, but some of my clients are surprised to see, oh, orange juice, it's on the list. That is really, really high in added sugar. They've removed all of the fiber, and so now the sugar is just hitting your cells like crazy. It can cause huge blood sugar spikes. And honey's on here. Honey has a lot of good components in it, but also it's really high in sugar. So try to limit honey. The rest of it, really doesn't have a place in a really well-formulated diet, except for your occasional treats. And if you see at the bottom, I put, this is a long, long list. I literally could not do a complete list on all of the foods that have high added sugar. The food companies keep figuring out ways to hide it, to put it in there and hide it. And so if you see these 2 labels right here, the first one, so I don't remember how many years ago food companies were required to start putting how much added sugar was in their products. And so this one on the left, if you see where it says added sugar, this one has 0 grams. So this would be a good choice. This one right here, it looks like it's a little high in sodium, but what we're really looking at is added sugar right here. And if you look at the label on the right, you see that it has 39 grams of added sugar. And so what this one is, Reese, do you want to take a guess on what this one might be?
That looks like it might be maybe a soda or something like that, huh?
It is. This is a 12-ounce can of Dr. Pepper. And so Dr. Pepper is amazing. I used to have a habit of about 2 of them a day. But this is an incredible amount of added sugar. Yeah. Okay, so now let's talk briefly about a simple equation we could use to plan healthy meals and snacks. And so the one that I use, just to keep it really simple, fiber-filled carbohydrate with a healthy protein and a healthy fat as often as you can. And some foods, they check more than one box. So let's look at this. Fruits, beans, all the different kinds of beans, sweet potatoes, oatmeal, berries. Those are whole, real foods, not processed, and they contain incredible amounts of fiber. The ones below that are not bolded, that's where we crackers, whole grain tortillas, whole grain breads, bagels, whole grain rice. While those do have nutrients, they have less nutrients than your whole real foods, and they have less fiber. So I always say, try to pick the veggie or fruit bean, then you can wrap it up or lay it on, the tortillas, breads, bagels. So that's a good way to put in fiber-filled carbs. Under protein, I have lots of great options here. Could be lean meats, fatty fishes, beans. Again, they're checking more than one box. Nuts actually check all 3 boxes. Under healthy fats, we've got things like avocado, our healthy oils, fatty fish, eggs. And so as you see, like fatty fish and eggs, they serve as a healthy protein and a healthy fat. So there are a lot of ways we can be creative here and still keep it simple, right? It doesn't have to be super complicated, but a lot of people believe that it is. And that just causes so much anxiety around food and
Yeah.
about what we're supposed to eat.
Paula, would you say it's fair to say that, the world we live in today with convenience and so forth, you're kind of set up for, with processed food so easily available, you just have to be very intentional, I would say, about making the proper choices, right? And not to be surprised that the more nutritious options out there may come at a higher price tag, right? That's just an investment you have to make in yourself.
Absolutely. And it doesn't make sense to me. The whole real foods typically are a lot more expensive, especially if you start talking about organic offerings. Those are going to have a lot fewer pesticides, herbicides, all of the things that we know contribute to inflammation and like cancer risk in the body. They, for whatever reason, our society has made those foods out of touch for so many Americans. They just can't afford them. And yeah, most of the grocery store, I take people on grocery store tours all the time. All of the aisles on the inside are just full of those processed offerings that are cheap and colorful, and they have wonderful marketing. And, you know, around the edges, kind of like the forgotten stepchildren, we have our fruits and veggies and our fresh dairy and fresh meats and our fish counter. And so, yeah, I mean, it's confusing, it's frustrating. A lot of people have no idea what to do. So they just grab for whatever is easiest and most convenient.
Yeah. It's been eye-opening for me just following a few health influencers on social media that'll kind of go through those grocery stores and, they'll take a product that you would think, oh yeah, that's fine, or that's actually, a healthy thing, right? And then they'll break down the ingredients and the soybean oils or whatever,
Oh my gosh.
things that
Yes.
are there that you really want to avoid.
Yeah, very inflammatory. And I am a nutritionist. I don't ever tell my people they have to be perfect. You have to eat 100% whole, real foods, nothing inflammatory. I mean, what fun would that be?
Right.
Sometimes we do, if there's a processed food we really enjoy, I never limit my people because that sets them up to fail. I just tell them try to start reducing as you can, replace things with more whole, real foods, especially the sweets. I find a lot of my people, once they start cutting down and cutting back on sweets, then they try to go back to it and they're like, oh my gosh, it was so sweet. And I could feel this sugar crash. And then I had this fatigue and I felt really horrible. And yeah, yeah. Okay, enough about that. Okay, so let's move on to supplements. And so a question I get a whole lot is, do we actually need supplements? And so I tell my clients, it just depends. First of all, let's look at your diet. Let's see what is referred to as nutrient dense. Let's see how many nutrients you've got in there. Let's see what your dietary habits are. Are you eating more whole real foods that have a lot of your vitamins, minerals, antioxidants in them? If they are doing mostly that and their gut is in good shape, they're digesting and absorbing really well, then I would say for most people, they don't need to supplement. But for the people they do have a less than optimal diet, or they are in transition from a less optimal diet to a better diet, or if they have some sort of genetic condition that affects the way different nutrients are metabolized in their body, and you wouldn't know that except through there are certain genetic tests, and actually there are certain blood tests that can reflect genetic things. For those people, I tell them, yes, let's go ahead and do a multivitamin, a multi-mineral. You can see on this list, it's very normal things. Vitamin C and D, a lot of people are deficient in those. Believe it or not, vitamin C is a huge deficiency. We are one of the only animals on the planet that do not make our own vitamin C. So it is when we have a lot of stress, antioxidant depletion, vitamin C goes down excessively. Magnesium, omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants, curcumin, probiotics, various herbs. Depending on a client's needs, these may be indicated. Sure. And so now I'm going to touch on a subject, our next webinar is going to be on this. It's going to be peak performance for the brain. And we are going to be diving into, what brain supplements might be great, what foods, what are the really therapeutic foods for the brain, what forms of exercise really support the brain. So we're going to talk about that next time. But right here is a list of some of the more common brain supplements. Omega-3 fatty acids probably top the list. Most of our brain cells are really, really dense with omega-3 fatty acids, the human body does not make its own omega-3 fatty acids. So we have to get them through the diet. And so when we've got the mood disorders, the chronic stress, the brain is under attack, the omega-3 fatty acids a lot of times are depleted. When they are depleted, our brain cells don't communicate with each other as well. They don't communicate with the rest of the body. They don't make the neurotransmitters that they really need to. It can create a lot of havoc. So that's one of my first places to go. But as you can see, there are a lot of different things on here. So I'm really looking forward to this webinar, kind of breaking down how these things work.
Yes, that's going to be great. I think there's just so much noise out there, Paula, when people start exploring that area and so many options that you can take and products, right? And
Mhm,
I'm
mhm.
excited to share with everybody, from a expert's perspective, here are the things that really, move the needle when it comes to this.
Yeah, and moving the needle, again, I think I touched on this at the very beginning of this presentation. Diet is going to move the needle the most because from your diet, you get a variety of nutrients, okay? You can't really do a less than optimal diet and just say, okay, I'm going to supplement my way out of it. When you do that, you're adding a supplement, it's an isolated extract, you're not getting the whole things from the plant, and you're definitely not getting it from the diet. So, supplements really help when they are met with a mostly nutritious diet. So here, we're going to end out this webinar with a case study. This is one of my favorite cases. It's a very dramatic case of how she improved very quickly. Functional medicine and nutrition they tend to be slower medicine, right? It takes a while to get our nutrient stores up, for our cells to start working better, our enzymes, our brain, all the things. It takes a while for things to start coming back up to regular activity. But with this woman, things happened kind of dramatically, and it was extremely exciting. So this was a 35-year-old female. She had a diagnosis of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Her symptoms emerged about 1 year prior, and she was diagnosed a few months after that. So she rated her symptoms as severe, and they had a significant impact on her quality of life. And with OCD can wear a lot of hats, right? It can look like excessive hand washing, turning off light switches. My mom was OCD and she loved to do that one. Checking the stove over and over again. So with this woman, hers was really severely intrusive thoughts. She never really shared with me what some of those thoughts were, but she said it really kept me from living my life. She had very low energy. She was a healthy weight, and she did do moderate physical activity most days of the week. She had a history of long-term veganism, and she had never supplemented. With veganism, there are several nutrients of concern that they just don't get from the diet. And so if you don't supplement, they're just not there and they become depleted. She had also used oral contraceptives for a long time, for about 10 years, and those have been shown in research to significantly decrease nutrients. They deplete a lot of nutrients in the body over time. And interestingly enough, she rated her external stress levels as low. Her job was good. She was in a happy relationship. They just bought a house together, very, very happy. Should have felt happy, right? But the OCD was really impacting her life. And so I did one lab investigation with her. Because of her history of oral contraceptive use and veganism, and because of her symptoms, I ran it's kind of like a micronutrient panel, but it did a whole lot more. So I wanted to check her levels of nutrients, see how her mitochondria were performing, see how her serotonin and dopamine metabolism were going, within the brain and throughout the gut. And so what we found with this young woman is she had low vitamin C. It was extremely depleted. She was low in the majority of her B vitamins. She only had two that were within normal range, and they were even low, but they were low normal. She had low magnesium and manganese. Those two minerals are extremely important in certain amounts. They've got to be there for you to have proper energy production. Um, she had low antioxidant status overall. She had imbalance in her gut microbiome. She had a lot of overgrowth in different areas that can really, you remember the gut-brain axis, that can really impact how the brain is functioning when the gut is out of balance. She had yeast overgrowth. That's part of that gut imbalance. Her mitochondria were struggling. This test measures different areas of mitochondrial function and metabolism, and they were struggling. And her serotonin metabolism, it can either go towards an anti-inflammatory, very functional pathway, or it can go towards a more inflammatory pathway. Hers was inflammatory. So what we did, my treatment protocol, and these happened in different stages, but this is overall what we did with her. To treat her nutrient deficiency and gut imbalance, I advised her to increase her veggie and fruit intake, especially berries and leafy greens, because those are really great for the body and the mind in particular. Because of her gut imbalance, her gut issues, I advised her to increase her fiber intake from the veggies, fruits, whole grains, things like that. And she agreed. She was a vegan, but she agreed. She was so desperate. She agreed to add fatty fish in twice a week and to add eggs in for those healthy fats, healthy proteins. And so because of her nutrient deficiencies, I advised her to do a high quality multivitamin, multi-mineral. She did a B complex. She did a chewable vitamin C. She wanted to have a fun supplement that tasted like oranges. I put her on magnesium and I put her on straight glutathione. And Reese, I don't know if you're familiar with glutathione, but it is the major antioxidant that the body makes. Most of it's made in the liver, but every cell is capable of making glutathione as well. That's how important it is. Hers was extremely depleted. So I
Yeah.
just put her on straight glutathione.
I have recently became aware of that. It is one of the IV therapies we offer at NeuroGlow, but understanding the importance of it, that and NAD and all these things can really help uh,
Absolutely.
boost your baseline. I think there's a general awareness that's becoming much more common for the average person that yes, you are gonna to get that peak performance, to get that optimal level of and quality of life that comes with it. Uh,
Yeah.
you've got to be cognizant of some of these things, right?
Absolutely. And so there's one caveat on glutathione. Excuse me, when someone is significantly depleted, it's a great idea to go in and supplement with straight glutathione. There are other precursors you could add, but this is one of the best ways to get there. However, having said that, if your glutathione levels are already adequate and you supplement, it could encourage your body to make less of the glutathione. And so it's kind of tricky. I really like seeing the need for it in a micronutrient test before I start telling people to take it. And one of the great things that NeuroGlow is offering is a more simple micronutrient test that will look at, okay, what is going on inside your cells? Are your nutrients getting in there? Are your antioxidants good inside the cells? And are they good in the blood? So it's kind of looking at both things. NeuroGlow, I believe, if I'm not wrong, we're also offering the NutriVal, right?
That's right.
This specific test.
Yes.
So I really love seeing on labs what's needed rather than just throwing different supplements and things at people.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I think that's huge. Being able to understand, where the deficits are and then plan and supplement against that, and then be able to, like you have here in your case study, be able to measure those results before and after. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
we're getting to a level of precision now that's much more than like, here's your vitamin C, here's your whatever supplement, right? Good
right.
luck.
Let's just throw stuff at you.
So, yes, absolutely.
There are a lot of people that do that, and I think it's wrong. Okay, so back to her treatment protocol. So on the left, we've already gone through that. That's what we did for her nutrient deficiencies and her gut. For her OCD, we added high dose omega-3s. On the NutriVal, her omega-3s were on the line. Okay, she was more adequate in those, but it was still recommended a little bit more to get it up to optimal, especially considering her OCD and how good omega-3s are for the brain. We went ahead and added some, and inositol. We added that. That's really great for OCD, and N-acetylcysteine. That is actually a precursor to glutathione. So that was another method to try to get her glutathione levels up. All right, so let's see how she did. So here's her follow-up. At 1 month, when my clients come back for a follow-up, I always ask them, how compliant were you? How often did you follow the dietary advice? What about the supplements? Did you take them as were advised? And so her compliance was about 70%, and I have to say that's really excellent. Most clients, it could be about 20 to 30%. She really gave it a really good try. And so she reported that at 1 month, her OCD symptoms had improved by about 50%. Some were still lingering, they still had an impact, but overall there was marked improvement. Her energy levels had improved by about 30%, and she reported her mood as more stable. At 3 months, her OCD symptoms had improved by 90%, which is incredible. She was only experiencing those intrusive thoughts when she was excessively tired, exhausted, fatigued, hadn't had enough sleep, but she was prioritizing sleep. So about a 90% improvement, which is amazing. Her energy had improved by about 50%. She was super happy with that. She was reporting her mood was stable most of the time now. And she had even started to decrease the amounts of some of her supplements, especially the OCD supplements, and her stable mood was persisting. So that was amazing. This is amazing. Okay, so just to wrap up, for mental health, the role that nutrition and stress play for our brain, it is best to have as much healthy food as we can work in there. Make sure we're getting enough physical activity to increase the oxygen and the nutrients to the brain. Try to discover or add in, try something new, some stress reduction technique, so that stress doesn't make the immune system act weird and increase inflammation, and prioritizing restorative sleep so the brain gets its time to repair. So all of that is on our plus column. On our negative column, our minus column, we see our unhealthy food, our chronic stress, and our sedentary lifestyle. And I always like to leave with this. This is one of my favorite mottos in my practice. Of course, we want to change when we need to. Not everybody needs to change a bunch of stuff, right? But when we do change, but do it slowly and mindfully, direction is going to be a lot more important than speed.
Thank you so much, Paula. This was excellent.
You're
Um,
welcome.
Learned
Thank you.
even more the second time around here. As we wrap
Oh,
up
I
here,
could talk
I
all
did
day.
No, this is great. I'm really excited for our next session for our Thrive members here. It's going to be on cognitive peak performance, like Paula mentioned. So we will send out the invite here in the next week for that, and look for that session in September. I did have a
Yeah,
good question that came through the Q&A.
sure.
I think it speaks to kind of your closing here, which is, I'm sure like many people that are watching today, every once in a while I've gotten this drive, maybe I've gained some weight or feeling bad, and I go into a very rigid diet for a while, right? And really try to restrict XYZ, right? Those changes can be overwhelming. And when we think about it as just a short-term diet, I really think the message here is that it's, you can have the fried food we like, right? And some of these other things, it's moderation, right? And making small changes. Could you
Mhm.
give the audience a couple of examples, some kind of tangible, like what are some smaller changes that could be made in the very beginning of that health journey for someone that's really starting to, average American that's like drawing the line in the sand, says, I'm going to, make a conscious effort to improve my nutrition and my overall health. What are a few steps that they could take right off the bat to make that a successful evolution?
Yeah, that is a wonderful question. And I actually went through this myself about 7 years ago. I was overweight and I did a whole dietary lifestyle change. That's what's triggered where I am today. And so the changes, early changes that I made, and this is what I tell my clients to do, I encourage them to do, is just start eating more fruits and veggies, especially vegetables. Fruits are great for you. They do have higher sugar. So you want a good balance between the two, but just start adding more of those. I mean, I had a client recently, he had type 1 diabetes, insulin dependent. All he did was eat sugar. I think he really kind of had a death wish at that point. He was so incredibly sick. He had so many conditions. He was mainly just eating sugar every meal of the day, sweets, high sugar things. And the first thing we did is I said, just keep the diet, keep what you're eating. But because he was really stubborn about it, he was like, I'm not giving up these things. I said, okay, that's cool. Start adding in more fruits and veggies to that high sugar meal that you're eating. And we did a micronutrient test on him. He came back deficient in several amino acids. Those are the building blocks of our proteins. We get those from having healthy proteins in the diet. So I said, just start adding in some fish, some chicken, maybe some grass-fed beef, fruits and veggies. So he started doing that and he started feeling so much better. And so I've been working with him now for about 6 months. He got to a point now where he's having sugar as a treat. He loves Bluebell ice cream. So he's having it as a treat, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And he sends me pictures of all these beautiful meals he created. He actually liked to cook. Some of my clients don't like it, and that's actually a service that I offer. I teach people how to cook sometimes. Um, but so just doing that for him, it boosted his motivation. He felt better. His blood sugar was under better control. He had more energy, more strength, started to gain weight. He was really underweight. And so doing that is a great first step. You can start to swap out. If you've got a lot of processed foods, you can start saying, let me start cutting down on this particular one. I'm going to start taking this one out. And instead of that, if I am actually hungry, I could have like a whole piece of fruit, or I could have, so, a healthier, maybe some hummus and some whole
Yeah.
grain crackers or something like that. Try to start removing those foods that are super processed, ultra processed, that give us no nutrients. Our brain doesn't even really recognize them that well. Start swapping those out. Another thing you could do is start replacing refined grains with the whole grains. Americans tend to eat a lot of grains.
Hmm.
And so if you could start just swapping those out, where when you eat the grain, at least you're getting a lot more nutrients.
Yes.
Um, that's typically where we start. Just starting slow. I do have some clients that are able to do it overnight. They're just like, okay, I'm drawing a line in the sand. They meet with me. They want to, starting tomorrow, they're going to eat healthy. That requires a whole lot of planning on so many different levels. If you're just going to go kind of 100% dietary change overnight, I've seen people do it. But I'd say 99% of the population, they need to start making small goals, start adding a beneficial thing, start reducing a non-beneficial thing. And once they meet those short-term goals, that gives them confidence and they are able to look at more long-term solutions.
Awesome. Well said, Paula. Thank you so much. For our audience that's watching today, if they want to learn more, potentially work with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
So my business phone number, would you like me to just go ahead and say it out loud?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Okay, my business number is 214-771-6143. I check that multiple times per day. I also have a website, nelmsnutrition.com. On there, you can schedule a 15-minute free discovery call, or you could go ahead and schedule appointments. Got a calendar up there you can schedule online. Or you can email me at paula@nelmsnutrition.com.
Very good. Awesome. Well, thank you for providing all this great information. for
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was a pleasure.
absolutely. And we will do this again. I want to thank all of our Thrive members for being part of this program. Hope you enjoyed this today. Please do give us feedback, and we will send out the recording after today. So with that, I hope you guys have an excellent rest of your day, and we will see you next month with a cognitive peak performance session hosted by Paula as well. Paula,
Yes.
see you then.
Bye,
All right,
everybody.
we'll see you. Bye.